Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. There are certain dates that define history. June the 6th, 1944 is certainly one, D-Day. The Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, in what Hollywood would aptly call the longest day, the beginning of the end of World War II. Some 29,000 Americans died during the invasion, another 106,000 wounded or missing, and today there are a few still alive to tell their story of how they made a stand at the beaches called Juno, Gold, Sword, Omaha, and Utah. It was that day at Utah Beach that 23-year-old Tank Commander George Cox, Jr. of the 746th Battalion shared the horror of war and stared it straight in the eye. Today, he and his wife, Leona, live in their rural home just north of Caldwell, where he proudly recounts those final months of the war, where he earned his Purple Heart and special recognition as a player in 5 major battles, including the Battle of the Bulge. It's an honor to have you, Sergeant Cox, here with us today. Sergeant Cox, talk a little bit about leading up to D-Day. Your battalion was actually quarantined in the south part of England near the English Channel, getting ready to go. Talk about that time. It was a very lonely time, but you learned about what your mission was going to be.
Yes, we was in the camp, and they give us maps and of the place of France there, the peninsula, and we also had to waterproof our tanks for 8 foot of water, and we just went about our duty of getting ready to go over there, and we weren't even allowed to talk to the cooks. They took our cooks away and brought in other cooks, and we weren't allowed to talk to anybody, nobody except the people in our tanks and our crew there.
But you knew the significance of your mission. You were pretty well aware that, as you told me, this was a maneuver, this was a mission that you had to win. You could not lose it.
There was going in and no coming back. You win, we had to win because they couldn't do this over again like that, as big as it was.
Right. Now, a lot of people who know their history books know that D-Day originally was supposed to be on June the 5th, the day before on a Sunday, but because of weather, they had to push it back a day. Eisenhower decided to push it back a day, and that kept you on a Higgins boat for quite a long time. Talk about that.
We had 5 tanks and 2 Jeeps on the Higgins boat, and we loaded them on a Thursday. I believe it was about the 2nd of June, and we laid in harbor overnight, and then we started out to go over to the beach because we were slower than some of the other vehicles and boats there, and we just had to wait a while in order to get in line to get our place to land on the beach over there. And the waves were so big they was coming over the top of the boat, and there was no place to sleep except setting up in the tank. No place to go to, one restroom and 35 people there on this little Higgins boat. And we fought that storm and didn't go very fast because of the waves are so big. And then they turned us around in the middle of the morning, and in the middle of the next day while they turned us around and headed us back. Of course, it was dark the whole time, raining,
right,
and the whole time we was going over. And then, of course, when we hit the beach that day, the sun came out, and there's all them ships around us, and other soldiers was with us and landing on the beach.
5 tanks on this Higgins boat, 36 men. You're on this boat for three days or more before you land at Utah Beach. What's the mood of these men? What do you talk about? How do you pass the time?
Well, we were trying to figure out some way to get to sleep or something to eat, and of course our adrenaline was high. We was waiting, and we didn't know what to be scared of, so we wasn't really scared because we didn't know what to be scared of. We were just going to land on the beach and go to fighting and to go to shooting. That's all we figured it was going to be.
Indeed. All right, let's go to that morning of June the 6th, and you take it from there. I know that when the Higgins boat landed, you were in a little bit deeper water than you had anticipated. Talk about your landing and talk about what happened from there. Go ahead, tell your story.
Well, we was due to come in at 7 o'clock that morning, but we run a little late coming in from there. because there was other things that was needed, because the beach wasn't that congested as the Omaha beach, and our 4th Infantry Division that we were in reserve with moved on so fast that the beach was all cleared and they needed hospital tents. They put a hospital tent on there and operated on the soldiers there by the time we got there at 11:30. And then we couldn't get across because they flooded the beach on each side of the road, and we couldn't get down the road for the water because one half track got stuck, and we had to find out what it was. The captain did, and they went up and pushed it off, and then we could go on inland to try to help the troops.
Mm-hmm. I want to back up, and I'd like to show a picture, if we can now, of your battalion, the 700, or your platoon, part
platoon.
of your battalion. And there they are. There's the men. Now, this was taken before you actually went across the Atlantic. Where was this picture taken?
In Alabama in 1943 in the summer there, out of Dothan, Alabama.
About a year before D-Day.
About a year before D-Day.
And if I was told right by you and your wife, excuse my pen here, I'm going to point, I believe that this is you right here in the second row bending over.
Yes, sir.
Right there. Right there. So quite a close group, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. You more was close with the 5 men in your tank because you were separated from the rest of the men. You didn't get to see them till after dark at night.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time you was in the tank moving around trying to find a place to fight or going to some place to fight. And we spent a lot of time standing up and sitting down in the tank.
Indeed, indeed. Now, I want to go back to the landing at Utah Beach. Describe, if you will, what we know what beaches look like today.
Yes.
Is it very similar to what it looked like today? What kind of beach? Was it a clean beach, white beach, dirty beach? What is it?
It was clean, except it had a lot of obstacles in there, which you can see in the top picture there.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to a picture that specifically that I want to look at when we get it ready to go. This is going to be a photograph I've got. Oh, here we go, coming up. It's this bottom picture that we're looking at.
Yes.
And this is your battalion, actually landing, a photo that was taken. And you told me that you can't be for certain, but there's a possibility that this may be the Jeep that was following your tank. It possibly, there's about a 1 in 9 chance that that was you, because I guess there were 9 different platoons coming on the beach. But this is essentially what it was, right?
Yes, sir. Each platoon had 5 tanks, and the last one coming off had a Jeep tied behind them.
Right.
And so it's hard to say whether that was me for sure or not. But I was in deeper water, and I had to go around the other tanks in order to get my drivers out of the water. They were standing up in the Jeep, and I had to pull around to get them out of there.
Indeed. And you talked about you came out of the Higgins boat, and you were actually in 8 feet of water, and that was barely enough room for you to maneuver exactly to get back on the beach. Were you afraid that you were going to get stuck in the water?
No, the tracks wouldn't settle in the sand.
I see.
That's the purpose of the track vehicles, because they could travel better in there.
Now down the way, how much do these tanks weigh? 32 tons?
32 tons.
32 tons. Now down the way at Omaha Beach, I understand that there were actually some of these tanks that had flotation devices around them designed to float, but a lot of times that didn't work in a lot of cases.
It didn't float, and they lost over 50% of their tanks. The 70th Tank Battalion did, going in ahead of us. And we didn't lose any. We got on there 54 tanks on the beach.
Right. June the 6th, that day, you land on the beach. You're waiting, as I remember, because there's a little bit of confusion as far as what outfit, whether it was the 101st or the 82nd, that you were going to be in support of before you actually got your orders on the beach. Is that right?
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Went on in the beach that day, and the first day, and then we didn't encounter the enemy, really. We stayed overnight, and it was the next day that we had orders to go to St. Demariglis to fight with the 101st Airborne, and before we got there, we run into the 82nd Airborne, pinned down with German SS paratroopers. That was supposed to be some of their best soldiers, their SS paratroopers.
Right. And
all the tanks went through the town, and I was the last one coming through, and they asked me to help out. The company commander told me to help out the battalion there of the 182nd Airborne there.
Right.
And we run into, I got knocked out, and that's where I got wounded there. And there's about 100 soldiers surrendered to us at that time, German soldiers.
So when you got on the beach, was there resistance initially when you came on the beach?
No resistance
No
to us on
resistance.
the beach. They already had pushed in.
Right.
Omaha Bradley was there on the beach trying to get things organized, and General Roosevelt that died of a heart attack over there, and he forced his way over there.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want him to go in there, but he went, and he took charge of things on the beach there.
You talk about General Bradley in sort of glowing terms. I can tell that. That's obviously a historical figure that you think a lot of.
Yes, he was the commander of the 12th Army Group.
Mm-hmm.
He was over Patton, and he was over Hodges, and there he was over 3 or 4 armies.
Right.
And he was there on the beach that day to see that his men was doing what they're supposed to.
Okay, you get beyond the beach, and as you said, the Germans had really flooded the roads to try to stall the invasion, but you were able to get through that and actually get to the roads behind the beach, and that's when you went into the town of Verville. Take us from there, from the next day and leaving the beach, and really D+1, which is the day that you suffered your wound.
Yeah, well, that's where we was at in Verville. We got up that morning. They gave us orders to go down, and the St. Demerglis was the objective, main objective. It was to cut off the flow of Germans from St. Lo, from Paris on through to Cherbourg, so they could capture that port, so they could use it for bringing in supplies. And when we did, that's where we run into the Germans.
And take us down that road as specifically as you can remember from 61 years ago, and the instance that you were wounded. I believe you said that your tank was hit 5 times. Is that right?
Yes. Well, first come into the little town, it was coming in from the east there, from the west, and coming into town, and there was a German in a wood pile, and he was shooting at us with a rifle. The bullet went down the side of my head, and I knew then that we was in war. And I told the boys to turn the gun around there and shoot the machine gun, and if that didn't stop him, we were going to shoot him with the big gun. Well, then evidently we got him with the machine gun because he didn't shoot at us no more, so we went on down the road. And there was a church there, and there was somebody in the church shooting down, a sniper shooting down on the soldiers, and I put the big gun to shoot up there, but he quit shooting. And we learned later that he got scared, the German did, and laid down in there, and 2 days later he surrendered. And we went on around by the church and turned left and went down behind the church on a road, and there was Germans all in the hedgerows in there. And we began to shoot at them, and they shoot back at us. And I was looking through a periscope, and they shot the top 2 inches out of the periscope and left part of it in my eye and part of it in my head there. And then they shot a shell through the tank. It knocked out my gunner and took off part of his head. And then there was 3 other boys in there, and I told them back the tank up, and they stalled the tank. And when they stalled the tank, I told them to knock the escape hatch out and get out and go to the left and join up with the paratroopers to fight. And a shell come in there and hit them and knocked all 3 of them out. And me being blind, I couldn't see them and I couldn't hear them, so they didn't answer me, so I jumped out of the tank and run with the paratroopers myself.
So you assumed that they had perished?
I assumed they were dead.
Right.
And when I came back, I found out all about them then.
Indeed. And you were giving these orders, and you couldn't see.
I couldn't see. I telling them what to do and everything until they wouldn't answer me no more, and I couldn't see them. And they came to. They tell me they came to, and they run the tank. The boy tried the tank again, and he got it started, and he run through the down the road behind the Germans, and they give each other first aid, got them bandaged up, and then turned around and come back through them. And right after that, then the Germans surrendered.
When you jumped out of the tank and you started running, you still couldn't see very well. Is that right?
I could open my eyes, and they would go shut back on me. I could only see for a few seconds. And the last I saw was I opened up, and there was an American paratrooper there with an M1 rifle right at the end of my nose. And he wanted to know if I was out of that tank. I told him, yeah, don't shoot, man, I'm an American. And then he told me to get in a ditch there, and I told him I couldn't see the ditch. He took me over and put me in it, and I crawled it up until I found some more American soldiers in there. And then the medics came, and I asked them to take me back, and they said they had a man on the litter. I said, well, I can walk. Let me have your belt, and I will follow you off. I held on the back of the medic that was carrying off a soldier, and they took me to the first aid station of the 101st Airborne and patched me up, and then sent me back to England.
Now, how long were you out getting patched up?
Well, I was out till June the 28th or 9th. Then they sent. I got back to my outfit.
So about 3 weeks or so.
About a little longer than about 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
About 6 weeks. It took me. Of course, I wasn't in the hospital that long. I was in the transit of getting back to my outfit. It took time to ship me back over there. And when we did, we came through right at St. Lo. When they made the breakthrough there, there was the 4th and the 9th and the 79th Infantry Divisions pushed out past St. Lo and made a breakthrough for Patton's army then to turn him loose.
Wow. But you came back after the 6 weeks that you were getting patched up, and you were put right back into a tank.
I was given another tank, another crew, and then we were in the gap there, the Floozy Gap there.
Right.
And we fought in it. That was one major battle there.
You were in 5 major battles.
Yes.
I guess the last one was the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes.
So there were 3 between your initial battle in Burrville and then the Battle of the Bulge, right?
The last one was the Remagen.
Okay.
But we were in the Bulge and in the Remagen and the Beachhead. We was in all 5 of them.
Talk about the Battle of the Bulge and where your platoon was actually situated, or what your involvement was there.
We just got through in the other major one is the Argonne Forest, and we was in that one with the 1st Army and the 9th Infantry Division, and we went from there to a rest area, and when the rest area was over, we was going back. Well, then that's when the Bulge came, and they turned us around and took us back then, and to push up the Bulge and hold in there to stop it out of Eupen, Belgium.
A whole nother element of your story, which we're about to get to, is what's just happened in the last couple of years. You returned to France in 2003, and again just about a year ago for the 60th anniversary of D-Day in 2004. But a gentleman that I want to talk about is a young man who was actually 7 years old on D-Day, who you found out years later had remembered your platoon coming in, your tank, and you being wounded. Last name is Godard. Talk about him and then just the miracle of meeting up with him all those years later.
Well, we went over there in 2003, and we had a tour guide we had hired, and he took us to the town. That's why I wanted to go to the little town where I was wounded, and we asked the lady if it was anybody still alive, and she said yes, and we encountered his son, and he said, wait, we want to get, Daddy wants to come back. And so we talked to him and talked about the war, and then he let us, told us that his mother put him in a hole in the chicken house and put tin over him so he wouldn't get killed.
And this was when he was 7 years old.
That was when he was 7 years old.
And he remembered it. He remembered it rather distinctly from 7 years old. This must have just been incredible for you to meet up with this, who was a youth back then, and I guess he was, what, about in his mid-60s, I guess.
Something
now,
in the mid-60s in there. And well, one reason this man took to us, too, is his brother got wounded. He was a civilian, and the 101st Airborne medics took him in and tried to save his life. He didn't make it, but he was so impressed with what the Americans had did for him there, for his brother, trying to save his life. And he always wanted to have someone, for Americans, and show his appreciation, to have them for lunch there with him. So when we told him we was coming back last year, he invited us for lunch with him.
Let's talk about that. June 6, 2004, you and your family and your wife and other members of your family returned to Normandy, and in fact to Vierville. And we've got some photographs that actually come off of a calendar that I believe was made for you, and I want to go to a couple of these pictures. Here's one right here. And talk about the 3 pictures that we are looking at. These were taken in on the 60th anniversary. Is that right? Talk
Yes,
a little bit about the photographs, the one on the left?
That is the mayor. That's the mayor of the town pinning a badge on me down on the left. And the one on the right bottom is two of the band of brothers that we met while we was over there.
Right.
And they were out of the 101st Airborne, I believe. And I cannot see what the picture is.
The one on the top, I think, is just a group of you just waiting for the ceremony to begin.
Yeah, we were waiting for the ceremony for this mayor to pin this on us.
To pin that on you.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, that medal, I believe, or one just like it, is the one that you're wearing today. Is that
Yes,
right? That
yes.
was the one that, as you can see, Sergeant Cox there, the medal there on the top, is the one that he is wearing today, and it's a depiction of soldiers actually rushing the beach. And that's something that you've just got to be very, very proud of.
I'm very proud of it. It had to be proved through the Pentagon for us to get it, and only the ones that went in on the beach there the first few days is entitled to it.
And of course, the very familiar medal there on the bottom left is the Purple Heart. Another one that you keep very close to your heart, right?
Yes, very close.
Now talk about the other medal a little bit, because we talked about the 5 major battles, and talk about the other medal. And people probably can't see it because it's very small, but the star that is attached to that medal.
There is a little bronze arrowhead on that medal. That's an ETO medal, and then they have the Pacific operations. And this ETO medal, all of us get it that was in there, and the ones that fought in the major battles would get a bronze arrowhead for coming in on the beachhead for there. And then each major battle you was in, you get a bronze star up till you get the 5th one. Then they give you a silver star. So the little star I have is a silver star for 5 major battles.
Again, you're very proud of that. We've got another photograph that I want to go to that is from this calendar, and there's 3 photographs on it that I want you to also talk about. One of them that we're going to be seeing is actually you with a, there we go, and we'll fix the glare on that. Excuse me, there we go. The one on the left, that's you and the mayor of Verville, is that right?
That's the mayor of Verville. He come over for the lunch that day. We had lunch with the Frenchmen. It took from 1:30 to 5:30 for lunch. And in between lunch, there, why the busload of Germans come in. There was 1 or 2 soldiers that had surrendered to us there, and he had been there before, so they got him to come there while we was there so we could visit with him. That's in your top picture. And the bottom one,
that just looks like your family.
that's the family and my family and his family.
And your family. That top right picture, this was a busload of Germans who was, excuse us, that were there for the ceremony, and you stood in Mr. Godard's backyard and actually had a conversation talking about your experiences of 60 years ago with these veterans, German veterans, who had fought against you 60 years ago. That must have just been a surreal experience for you.
It was very emotional.
Yes, yes.
There. We had an interpreter that would take what I said and interpret to them in German, and then he would take what the Frenchman said and then put it into German. He spoke all 3 languages, and we just had a marvelous time visiting there, and with the folks. And one of the soldiers said, German said to me, "I'm certainly glad we didn't kill you, so we'd have a little while to visit with you."
The feeling was likewise, I'm sure.
I told him, I said, I am certainly glad you didn't kill me. I enjoyed visiting with you.
Here's another photograph that we'd like to go to, again, from this special calendar that you have. The one on the left is actually you dining with the Godard family there in his backyard. Is that right?
We was visiting with him just before lunch. They took us in the house for lunch. This is in his backyard.
And just more photographs of that gathering from a year ago.
That's some of the family inside there.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Very, very fascinating. This is
Yeah.
a trip that you'll never forget. Now, this summer you're going to stay home, I understand, but then you're planning on another trip a year from now, and I guess in the summer of 2006. Is that right? You're going to go back?
It depends on our health.
Depends on your health, of course. That's what it all.
We'd like to go.
But you look forward to that.
Yes.
And I'm going to lift this and then let the camera come to me here in just a moment. This is something that you have in your home, and I'm going to put it right up here. And this is a shell casing that, see if I can hold it to where the camera can see it. This is a shell casing that you have in your home. How did you come about this? This was during your training in the States that you
It was in my training in Virginia, and we went on the firing range and fired these, and I took one of the shells and I went out and got one of the armor-piercing shells, because if high explosives blows up, all that is in little bitty pieces, and that's what kills people with the high explosive. And this is one here is armor-piercing. It's supposed to go through a tank. They told us it would go off of the front of a German tank, but it wouldn't. It would ricochet off. Their tanks were superior to ours. We had to do our firing into their suspension system, into their wheels, in order to knock them out with this.
I can't imagine.
It's a 75 millimeter shell.
I can't imagine to explain to the audience exactly how heavy that is. I held it off for about as long as I could hold it up.
The projectile itself is 15 pounds.
Yes, and it's designed to take out a German tank. Is that right?
It will go through 3 inches of iron.
Right, right. I know you visit with schools a lot, and you tell your story, and I know that that's something that the school children like to do. And we're about out of time, but I know that that's something that they like to hear. They like to hear the story and hear the story of history of World War II. And I hope that your health continues and you be able to keep telling your story, because it is indeed a fascinating one. And we thank you very, very much for being with us and joining us, Sergeant Cox.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Indeed. George Cox recalls that June day 61 years ago with remarkable clarity, as you can see. Perhaps such vivid memory is the byproduct of uncommon bravery, seeded by uncommon patriotism. The greatest generation is defined by heroes like George Cox. And what an honor it is that he lives among us. We take our freedom for granted, and that's okay, as long as we remember to thank those who gave it to us. Please thank a veteran today, and join me in saluting Tank Commander George Cox of Caldwell. I'm Tom Turbyville on behalf of our underwriter, First National Bank. Please join me next time on Veterans of the Valley.